Welcome to the Santa Fe Mid-Texas Division Tour 2. A lot of progress has been done on the layout since Tour 1. The layout is almost all scenic and landscape except for 4 foot of backdrop which needs to be painted and 8 foot of actual layout that needs to be landscaped in the town of Williamson. We'll start our tour here at the south end of Crumpet City Yard. You'll see the ice house is in place in the background with icing docks, Swift meat packing plant with stockyards. You'll see Crumpit's grocery supply in the background. Hay barn, sand bin for sand for stock cars. We'll proceed northward where we'll see Crumpet City Yard, which is a 9-track flat yard. Longest track holds 26 cars, shortest track holds 6 for a total of 160 cars. You'll now see Crumpet City Engine Terminal, which services both steam and diesel engines. Turntable, roundhouse, Now we'll get into Crumpet City Passenger Terminal. In the background, you'll see Vicacall Cotton Warehouse. American Hardware Supply. Armstrong Electric Company. Santa Fe Freight House, Post Office, Railway Express Agency, Santa Fe Commissary Building, McGraw Oil Company, oil loading facility with a 10-car spot. Barrel Junctions, named after model railroader David Barrel of Austin, Texas, which influenced me a lot in the building of this model railroad, especially the bench work. He's well known for his bench work called dominoes, which I implemented in the building of this layout, building the bench work. Leaving Barrel Junction, we come to the Kunsi River, which is named after my grandfather, Ernest Kunsi. Come to the town of Brooks, which is named after my uncle Brooks, who was an engineer on the Santa Fe, who retired running the Texas Chief. All towns are named for people that influenced me in my life. Freight yard, stock pens, the town of Brooks in the background. Leaving Brooks, we come to Double Track Junction. By the way, from Barrows Junction to Double Track Junction is all double track. Double track ends here at Double Track Junction, and the railroad becomes a single track main line. We now come to the Malay River, which is named after my wife's family, mother and father. We now come into the town of Williamson, which is named after an engineer that I lived across the street from up until I was 6 years old. He was an engineer for the Santa Fe. He had a model railroad in his garage, which I would go across the street and spend many hours watching him run model trains. And that's where my first impression of model railroading got instilled in me, was by him. And from the first time I saw his layout, I knew I wanted a layout someday. As you can see in the background, this is the portion of the layout, the backdrop, which has not been painted, and a portion of the layout which has not been landscaped yet. The backdrop was painted by the widow of a Santa Fe engineer, Larry Hentz, Jennifer Jones Hentz. Unfortunately, in this town is where I lost Jennifer. She could no longer paint for me. The same art teacher that taught Jennifer taught me. I did not like painting in high school, though. She couldn't get me to pick up a paintbrush, but I wasn't asleep, though, when she was teaching. I had to start painting this town myself. Hanson Farm. We now come to the town of Rosstown, named after my cousin Lawrence W. Ross, known as Squeaky, which was a conductor for the Santa Fe out of Galveston. He's the one that pretty much instilled a love of trains in me. He was taking me on trains before I could walk. Cabooses, engines and stuff. He did not have any kids. And when he'd come up to Belleville, he'd call my mother, and my mother would go to Belleville and pick him up. They were two peas in a pod. They loved nature. They'd either go hunting, fishing, whatever, golfing. And he just treated me like a son. Leaving Rosstown, we go into a cut. The cut ends in Hideyard, which is a hidden staging yard. Hyde Staging Yard has 8 tracks. Longest track holds 32 cars. Shortest holds 14, for a total capacity of 200 cars. There is a loop underneath here where the trains turn themselves to where they are ready to go back outbound out of Hideyard after completing the whole run of the railroad. There's also a stub-in staging yard at Hyde with 6 tracks. Longest track holds 13 cars, shortest track holds 7, for a total of 64 cars. That concludes Tour 2 of the Santa Fe Mid-Texas Division Model Railroad.